Hey, it's Drybear. Back again with our Diablo 4 build guide. Today we'll be talking about the Undead Lord or the Scalemancer for Necromancer in Diablo 4. I've been planning on playing Druid as my main for my first character when Diablo 4 launches, but making this build specifically, I always love Scalemancer and D2 with Enigma where you can blink on top of people and the minions would all hit. I love Scalemancer, one of my favorite. I love minions and summoners in general, but this build specifically got me very excited because there's a lot of options you can get between your golem, your mages, and your warriors, as well as the Paragon board that affects all of that, puts it all together. And there's some cool legendaries as well, and ancients and uniques that really put the whole build into a really fun spot. I'm pretty excited about it. But first, you should come hang out with me on a live stream. I'm live every single day, twitch.tv/Drybear. You should come hang out. If you don't come hang out with me on my live stream, then tomorrow when you wake up, you're gonna be one day older. So let's jump into the guide. If you're looking for it, I have a full build for legendaries, endgame abilities, all of your minions, what buffs to get, as well as a full skill tree for maxed out when to unlock Paragon. And I've gone through and done a first pass on a Paragon board for the Scalemancer. There's gonna be some questions here on if they change anything before live. So I wouldn't look at this as being locked in stone, but if you want a basic layout for the Scalemancer, the Undead Lord Necro, I'll put that down in the description. You can link to it and you can mess around with it. I've saved it as well. And what's cool about the Undead Lord Necro is you can actually level with this one. I think this one works at level 1 and it works all the way at max level with Paragon as well. So I think there's some really cool opportunities for that. Beginning with our builder, the top of the skill tree, we're gonna pick up Decompose here. There isn't a huge over-under between the builders here in being able to generate essence. You're going to be focusing more on buffing your minions, generating essence and spending, and then getting debuffs, as well as healing your minions by resummoning them, that sort of thing. However, what's great about Decompose is it's very easy, very accessible. You can get some damage off of it. You can modify it with legendaries to make it AoE. But primarily what we're after here is the last split of the tree here, which is you and your minions deal 10% increased damage to enemies who are being decomposed. So while you're channeling, you get a nice damage bonus. This one isn't super necessary for just clearing packs, but it's very nice to be able to channel on a boss mob or a champion or an elite and be able to get that extra little bit of damage for your minions as they start to chunk down on the target. And of course, we can get the Rotting Ring, which is the Rotting legendary. You can put this, I believe, on rings, amulet, and weapon. Decompose can chain up to 2 additional targets, and when it spawns a corpse, has a chance to spawn a corpse under all afflicted targets, which isn't super necessary for this build until later on, but Decompose chaining up to additional targets means that when you're channeling on one, you can channel on multiple. It gives you a little bit extra essence, and it does give you more spread of that debuff for that damage amp for your minion. For Spender, we're going Blight for a few reasons. Not only can you slow enemies that get hit by Blight, you can actually, this is a Shadow or Darkness spell, and there's some cool things we can do with Shadow and Darkness as well. Debuff targets, get damage amp, and there's some things on the Paragon board that are useful for hitting a target with shadow damage and then amplifying your overall damage or your minion damage. And there's parts of the tree here that can scale up it as well. So we like having darkness, we like having shadow damage on this. There's plenty of benefits there. It'll apply a slow, which is in the crowd control category, super useful, but primarily, again, just with Decompose, we're gonna get the last modifier here in the tree. You and your minions deal increased damage to enemies with Blight. So while the enemy is blighted, you and your minions get damage amp, but primarily your damage is all coming from your minions in this build anyway. Getting your minions damage there is super cool as well. There is a legendary that allows you to modify Blight to have a vortex effect where it sucks enemies in, which is great for mobbing and doing basic dungeons. However, I think in endgame, you probably won't be able to run that legendary because it is on the same slot as some of our best legendaries, and I just feel like you want more damage or more survivability for your pets rather than just a vortex effect on the minions. But if you get the drop randomly and you're running Blight, it is a fun one to run. Because we're running 2 minion spells, we will have Summon Skeletons and Summon Golem on our bar for abilities. That means we have to give up some in categories because we have already locked those slots in. So when it comes to Corpse and Macabre, the only thing you're gonna wanna pick up here is this passive to the right, which gives your skeletal warriors health and damage. Super useful. You will need it for some of the harder clearing at endgame because the minions can take some damage. And before you get Paragon board on board or online, you won't really have as much survivability, and you will need it for your pets starting out. this is one of the best ones to get. So just pick up the passive and keep moving. However, when it comes to curses, we do want Decrepify. This one gives us a slow in area and the enemies deal less damage. It helps us with grouping mobs up and helps us with keeping our minions alive, which is super nice. And it also will do a 10% chance to stun if they're CC'd. It's just nice to have in big groups, which is pretty cool. But when you or your minions hit an enemy afflicted with Decrepify below 10% life, they are instantly killed if they're non-bosses. Because you are hitting so much with minions, right? In this case, there's a legendary that gives you 2 extra warriors and 2 extra mages later on. So you can actually have a pretty substantial army. I think you can get up to like 9 or 10 minions, even higher than that. You can go well into the double digits for minions. Because you're hitting so often, as soon as enemies start hitting that 10% threshold, you'll very easily execute them if they have Decrepify. And this gives you some nice increase. We'll be running with an Iron Golem, which is an AoE, which can apply this in AoE as well. He counts as a minion, so he can stomp and execute all enemies that are non-bosses that have that. And it's super useful too if they have a block or something like that. You can chew right through those defenses. Decrepify is super cool. It's low essence cost. Throw it out. It gives you damage reduction, survivability for you and your minions, a slow, and a nice little execute. Additionally, just like we did in the last little category here, we're going to pick up the modifier for your mages. This one is just an easy passive to pick up. We have plenty of points to spend on passives. So anytime you see this coloration right here, it shows you exactly that that's a minion effect. We're going to pick almost all of these up in the build because we're focused on minion damage. When we get down to the second to last category here for our spells, we're going to pick up none of these abilities. We don't need them. There's not really any major here. But this one does have some really cool damage options for us in the shadow passive tree to the left there that we're going to want to focus on, especially since we're running Blight. You want to pick up all of these except for the bottom middle. To recommend something like this. You'll get a little bit of movement speed when you hit with a Darkness skill, but also you can make it so when you damage enemies with Darkness skills, they take increased shadow damage from you and your minions. We're going to be running Shadow Mages as well, which makes them deal more damage, which is super cool. And then we can also make it so that you get and deal more damage to enemies that are slowed. Remember, our Decrepify is applying a slow, so we're guaranteed to get that. We can even have it on our Blight, which is free. Damage to enemies who are stunned or immobilized, which is even more damage, which of course we do have the ability to stun with Enhanced Decrepify. We're also hitting very often because we have a lot of minions. And then these stack and apply to shadow damage dealt by your minions. So all of this works really well together. This is kind of why we picked up Blight in the first place, is so we could benefit from this tree. For our ultimate, of course, we're picking up Army of the Dead. It should be very obvious that this is the one that works. So this one's super great. You activate it, volatile millions appear, volatile skeletals appear and attack. All of your minion damage bonuses will modify this and make it better. And then when they explode, they have a chance to leave behind a corpse, which is generally just useful specifically for your golem. Army of the Dead also raises skeletal warriors and skeletal mages, which gives you even more minions out of that. Which by itself, it isn't crazy synergy. You're just going to benefit from having the minion damage. But the reason we like having this the most is the unyielding commanders aspect, which you will get later in the game. However, while Army of the Dead is active, your minions gain up to double attack speed. So for that duration of Army of the Dead, all of your minions, including the ones you're freshly spawning, the ones you already have, and the ones you've yet to create, will get that bonus while Army of the Dead is active, and they take 90% reduced damage. So during Army of the Dead, you are just absolutely unstoppable. Your minions can't die. They do double attack speed, which has benefits in the warriors, the mages, and the golems. All of these have crazy effects. We have things like AoE for the golems, and we'll get into the pets in a minute. So this one's super nice to have, but that's the reason why we run this ultimate. Next, remember we talked about this kind of teal color for pet effects or pet minions. We're going to want to grab almost all of these in the ultimate tier and the key passive bonus down here. So we're going to go ahead and pick up increased life and damage of Golem. We're going to pick up increased damage reduction by a percent, reduced by 2% for each active minion. I just realized I had this left over from a different build. This is not what you want. You don't want standalone. We're going to take those points. We're going to put them up here, and I'll have that reflected in the build. But the rest of these we will pick up. So we want increased life and damage for Golem. We want after being healthy for at least 4 seconds, you and your minions gain attack speed. This is super nice when you use Army of the Dead because you can maintain healthy for a lot longer because of the damage reduction bonus. The bonded essence is crucial. Every 5 seconds, your skeletal priest healing will heal your skeletons for an additional of their maximum life. It goes up pretty high. If you don't know what the skeletal priest is, it's when you resummon minions and you're at max minions already. a skeletal priest will appear and heal your minions. But having this one, which is really nice, it's crazy healing for your minions, and especially in between the cooldown of Army of the Dead, you'll have a really easy time keeping them alive. The Death's Defense is one of the best passives you have for your minions. It means that minions cannot lose more than 45% of their maximum life from a single hit, which means they can't be one-shot, they can't even be two-shot. So once you max this out, even at the base level, until they change the numbers or they keep it, 75% is the max, so you can still make sure they don't get one-shot. So this is super useful for keeping them alive. And then Hellbrent Commander, your minions deal increased damage when you are close to them, so all of your melee minions that are on top of you are always going to get this benefit, and then your mages will off and on get this. When it comes to key passive, there isn't a super huge win here. Across the board, you probably could mess around with Shadow Blight if you really wanted to. It probably is going to be the easiest way to use this because you're running Shadow Mages, and then you also get the chance to increase the shadow damage. That's not going to affect your warriors or your golem, but it will affect the Shadow Mages, which is nice. This is probably just going to be the easiest way to start. You can run with Kalan's Edict. I'll have to actually get to endgame with Paragon and test the two and just see if maybe Shadow Blight parses better, and that actually opens up a legendary opportunity for us for using the Shadow Blight key passive modifier to get that bonus there. But I would think Kalan's Edict is probably the safer one while leveling in general, just getting that extra attack speed that gets doubled up, and it means that they can attack. All of your damage is coming from minions, so this one is a very safe bet. When it comes to minions, for mages, we've talked about already, we want the Shadow Mages. They fit the best in this build. There's plenty of shadow bonuses that we get from this. Shadow Mages deal shadow bolts every time they attack, but they also you can modify them to get an additional shadow bolt every 6th attack, which when you get the legendary that adds 2 more Shadow Mages, you're going to start just getting some rapid fire machine gun shots from these, triggering shadow damage, scaling shadow damage, and getting all those bonuses. When it comes to warriors, I think while leveling, obviously you're going to get access to the skirmishers first. I think you could run the crit bonus for extra damage. It's really nice for single target bonus. And I have a feeling that these skirmishers are going to be better. One thing as I was testing it is I feel like the Reapers were insufficient. Now, if you get the extra added 2 more warriors later on, and you get more bonuses and benefits, it's possible the Reapers start to outperform the skirmishers. But right now, I'm going to recommend that you pick up the skirmishers with the crit modifier. And then lastly, for the golem, we do want the Iron Golem. This is super awesome. He's very good. He is an AoE option, which is great because we have so much attack speed for our minions. So having that AoE slam is really nice. We're going to get the modifier so that every 5th attack is a big AoE that does damage to the primary enemy and enemies behind them, which can trigger more. And also, he has the slam that stuns enemies. And we know that against stunned enemies, we have shadow damage scaling, and all of that works really well together. So there's some legendaries in here that I'm going to go through. There's some that are like very end game, so things like the Ring of Mendeln you're not going to have access to until you finish your build, but it is super nice. What this is a unique that you can pick up that while you have 7 or more minions, which you can easily get with this build, up to 10% chance on lucky hit to empower all of your minions, causing the next attack up from them to each explode for physical damage, which makes your mobbing so much easier. Because now you're doing AoE damage and you have the lucky hit chance, and then you can modify your build to run lucky hit later on as well to get that benefit. We already talked about getting the unyielding commanders aspect. While Army of the Dead is active, your minions gain attack speed and take reduced damage. Super easy. Decomposed chains additional. We talked about this already. It's ring, amulet, weapon, and then gloves as well. But yeah, you really just kind of want to put this here. You can probably swap it over to gloves, but I like having Frenzied Dead on those for now. I think for this build, you probably want to run a one-hander and a shield possibly, just to have the extra defense, and gives you 2 different options because again, your primary is your minions. I think Aspect of the Void fits really well on the shield, but if you can also run a 2-hander for damage scaling and just bonuses, this is a nice to have. This is the Blight Vortex legendary that I talked about earlier. That will work great, but it's not something you have to kind of rush to get, or if you get it, you can kind of put it on, but it's not huge. Aspect of Reanimation is amazing. And again, as you push harder and harder content, you will want more damage reduction for your minions to keep them alive. And Reanimation is great for that because it means that your skeletons get increased damage while alive. The longer you keep them alive, they get maximum value after 10 seconds. So if you're not having to respawn your minions a lot, you can get the maximum value of up to 30% more increased damage for them, which is excellent. Blood Getters is it unlocks later on. This one's actually pretty late in the game, but you will end up picking this up. Increases the maximum number of skeletal warriors by 2, which gives you 2 more of those. And then we also have the viscous aspect. Number of skeletal mages increased by 2. So it gives you 4 more minions, so your army grows, it gets even better. So that's why I'm super excited, as the end game for this gets really, really fun. Defense-wise, I think Crowded Sage is probably the best bet here for Pants, just because you will need the extra healing, and you're near enemies all the time, cursing them and standing near your melee minions anyways. And I think this is just a free way to get extra bit. There is a combination of Crowded Sage plus the legendary that allows you to convert healing that goes beyond your maximum health into Fortify, and then you can use that for Overpower. I just don't think it fits in the build right now until I actually get to test this with full Paragon at endgame. It's possible that that combination ends up being really cool. Frenzied Dead, which is nice. Each time one of your summoning minions damages an enemy, they gain attack speed, and it stacks up as they go. So when you get things like when you pop your ultimate, which gives them fat attack speed, they then stack up Frenzied Dead faster and faster and faster until they get maximum benefit. And then all of a sudden they're just... And then you combine that with the Ring of Mendeln, which means that they're exploding. It's crazy. And then lastly, for Helm, when you have 7 or more minions, your minions gain increased damage reduction. Makes them tankier. Super nice. So that's the build overall. And we can show that some gameplay there in the corner, but this is also the Paragon board. I think that in the order that you unlock the boards, you probably do want to get Cult Leader into Hulking Monstrosity. There's some really nice glyph options here that really make your minions stronger and stronger. And I think the Iron Golem getting some benefits here is going to be really, really great. You can get this to do some serious damage late game. And I think there isn't really like major synergy on the remaining boards once you're fully maxed out on points. But I think that Wither and Scent of Death have some nice options here. Self-healing and crit, and then you can get some bonuses here just for defense as a final bit here. But your primary Paragon boards are going to be Cult Leader and Hulking Monstrosity. And that's the Undead Lord build. If you like summoning builds and having pets and minions and all that, I think this build is awesome. It beats out, I would say, the Druid builds that have summoning and even the Conjuration builds for Sorceress. This one is really, really cool. So if you like the video, leave a like down below. It helps me out tremendously. Leave a comment as well to help boost it in the algorithm so YouTube sends it out to more people. And that's what you got. So there you go. If you're looking for more guides, I have tons of them on my channel for Diablo 4. And I'll see you in the next one.
If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content. Link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.